There were tough words from the Bush administration today in response to Iraq's latest moves. Mr. Bush was trying to enjoy his Maine vacation as best he could under difficult circumstances.
President Clinton and his family head off to Martha's Vineyard today. Mr. Clinton leaves behind independent counsel Kenneth Starr and his grand jury.
I call upon all nations to do everything they can to stop these terrorist killers. Thank you. Now watch this drive.
Let's go to Martha's Vineyard now, where the president is on vacation with his family. Some Republicans are criticizing the president for hitting the links while our military is striking these targets in Iraq.
It happens every August. Let's get into this now with the Roundtable. Bill Kristol, editor of the Weekly Standard, Democratic Congresswoman Donna Edwards from Maryland, David Plouffe, President Obama's former campaign manager and White House strategist, and Peggy Noonan from the Wall Street Journal. I want to show some of these headlines from this week. Right now, we saw the president taking some real heat right there, including in your magazine, Bill Kristol. The Weekly Standard calls this appalling. The only timeless value the president seems willing to stand for is golf.
Well, I think we call his policies appalling. If he were pursuing good policies, if he had left 10,000 troops in Iraq and were bombing the heck out of ISIS, I would say go ahead and play golf, Mr. President. The problem is his policies, not his vacation.
Well, he did, but there was a lot of criticism, David Plouffe, of the vacation. President, no one begrudges the president a vacation, but it was the juxtaposition of that statement about James Foley with a round of golf just an hour later. Mistake, right?
I don't think so. I mean, I think that was a very powerful statement. And you showed some clips before we joined you. This is a political tradition. When Peggy's boss would go to California, deep criticism. When both President Bushes went away, President Clinton. So when you're the President of the United States, you're never really on vacation. You're on, as you know, on 24/7. And I think this whole discussion of optics is something that fascinates Washington, but really doesn't fascinate the American people. They're interested in, what he had to say that day and ultimately what we're going to do to confront the threat.
Peggy?
I think what your old boss is doing here is very dangerous for him in an optics way. It has to do with making real, making into a metaphor something that people already think. There's already a sense out there from Democrats and Republicans that the president seems a little bit disengaged from the process and a little detached from what's going on. For him repeatedly to be showing for many months now that vacation and golf and all of these things are so terribly important to him underscores the original charge of a certain detachment and disengagement. Nobody begrudges a president going away, but people are impressed when a David Cameron, during a crisis like this moment with ISIS, comes back from his first day of vacation to do his job. And they're impressed when the French, I think, foreign minister says to Mr. Obama, sometimes you have to stop having fun. You have to be doing the job.
And Congresswoman Edwards, the president is going to be coming back to Washington tonight. And we heard from Chairman McCall. He says that Congress should be coming up with a new authorization once the president's War Powers Authority runs out. There's going to be some resistance that I would imagine inside the Democratic ranks of the House.
Well, I think this is, but we need to have the debate. I think that's really important. I don't think that we can continue beyond the War Powers authorization without an authorization from Congress, if that is what Congress chooses to do. So I'm looking forward to the debate. And I have to tell you, this silliness around the president golfing is ridiculous. This president has taken 200 fewer days of vacation than President Bush. And, the American people know that the president is president 24/7.
On the bigger questions, Bill Kristol, it struck me how quickly this has all moved, from ISIS being, a minor threat, the president talking about it several months ago as the junior varsity, to now an imminent threat, the words of Chuck Hagel, to the United States. And I guess I wonder, is there a danger here of overreacting?
I wish there were, but I think the fundamental danger remains underreaction. Back in January, when the president said to David Remnick, we've decimated al-Qaeda, core al-Qaeda, as they'd like to say, it's just a JV now. Our ambassador to Iraq, appointed by President Obama, Robert Beecroft, was telling Martha Raddatz, she reported this on your show and here on ABC, that we have a huge problem. There's this group ISIS that has taken over Fallujah and Ramadi and has ambitions to go north. Someone asked the ambassador, I believe in private, well, what is the White House doing about this? And he kind of shrugged. So I think the president, I would like a little overreaction by the president now. When he's coming back from this vacation, he should go to Congress right away to get authorization. But meanwhile, he's acting under the War Powers Act, and he shouldn't wait. He shouldn't wait. There's a huge amount of bombing and damage that can be done to ISIS tomorrow if the president orders it.
And given the president's rhetoric on Thursday, a cancer, on the world, there's going to be a dramatic escalation of action as well to match that rhetoric.
Yeah, what was very interesting the past week was the comments of Chuck Hagel, not a burly pro-war figure, someone who's been skeptical in the past, saying this is the biggest and worst thing we've seen in a long time. The comments of General Dempsey, saying essentially the same thing, something big and bad is happening here. It's part of the reason the president was so criticized for not saying what, in fact, I think Hagel and Dempsey said. Do you know what I mean? They were making presidential-type statements.
But I think the question here is really the in part the reluctance, because there's not been the political movement that we need to have happen in Iraq to consolidate the Iraqi factions, because otherwise all the bombing in the world then doesn't stop ISIS from continuing to, to grow and to fester, given the political situation in Iraq. And I think that's what the president is trying to balance.
David, the president has been reluctant to go back in.
Well, sure, but I think I think even his deepest critics would support the notion that when it comes to going after terrorist threats, whether it's in Afghanistan, Pakistan, Yemen, Somalia, this president and administration has been very, very aggressive. And obviously there were strong statements this week about what may to come. But I do think there's a conventional wisdom in Washington, which is to every problem, let's use our military first and ask other questions later. And it's a real problem. I mean, when this president took office, there was 180,000 troops in Iraq and Afghanistan. We're going to be down under 10,000 once we draw down in Afghanistan. So I think we have to ask these hard questions, because we've seen what happens when you use the military first and really don't have a strategy afterwards.
The president's been president for almost 6 years. You can talk about asking the hard questions and having the debate. You know what? All the military power in the world would degrade ISIS an awful lot. We can worry about the Iraqi government. We can worry about what's happening elsewhere. If we bomb ISIS, command and control, training camps, etc., in Iraq and Syria, we can do a lot of damage.
Well, the reality is that the political situation that's been created that allows ISIS to fester now in Iraq was actually created by an administration, the Bush administration, that actually didn't ask the hard questions and didn't tell the truth when we got in the first place. And now this president has to clean up that